listening to The Marc Cox Show. Find everything Marc Cox at 971talk.com/Cox.
We're taking a very deep dive right now in all aspects of our tax code under the theory, go big or go home. We are not looking to sort of play around on the edges on tax reform in this country.
That was Mick Mulvaney, the budget director there. You certainly get the impression that this administration likes to go big or go home. Today may be an example of that. We're still waiting to get more details on what happened in Afghanistan with the dropping of this bomb this morning on ISIS. We're expecting something on that later this afternoon. In the meantime, we have a special guest for you right now, the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee. Ronna McDaniel is our guest. Ms. McDaniel, first of all, let me thank you for delivering Michigan in November.
Oh, well, thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here for the first time on your show.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you. We certainly appreciate that. You've taken over the party at an interesting time. I mean, when you look at state houses across the country that are predominantly Republican these days, control of both houses of Congress, the White House, I assume that doesn't necessarily make your job any easier?
It doesn't, actually, and history shows that the party that holds the White House in 100 years, only 3 times have they been able to keep the House in the midterms. So when it's easy to unite when you want something, and now that we're governing, we need to hold that, and that's my job to make sure we can hold those majorities so our president can accomplish his agenda.
Absolutely. How does 2018 shape up? I know here in Missouri, for example, Claire McCaskill, there's a lot of talk about the fact that she's vulnerable because the president won Missouri by such a large amount. And then she goes and votes votes against Neil Gorsuch. I was shocked by that decision, but I'm guessing that's all going to be hashed out in the next 18 months or so.
Well, it was sad to see Senator McCaskill vote based on her party affiliation rather than on the people of Missouri, and the fact that they overwhelmingly supported Donald Trump. They knew he was going to be appointing the next justice to the Supreme Court, and she chose to use a filibuster for the first time in history in our lifetime. And it was a sad state of affairs, and Senator McCaskill really did not serve the people of Missouri well that day.
No. You did have a win this week in Oklahoma, correct?
In Kansas.
We
had a win. We had a special election in Kansas to replace the seat of Mike Pompeo, who's gone on to be the CIA director, and we won that election, and now we're going on to some of these other special elections, and the Democrats have found that they are going to unite around no and resist and obstruction, and Republicans are going to continue to focus on governing and bringing good policies that will help the American people.
Yeah, sorry about that. Here in Missouri, we get Kansas and Oklahoma mixed up all the time. Sorry.
That's okay.
It's sort of like I'm sure in Michigan you felt that way about Ohio, right?
Yeah, Michigan and Minnesota, no.
That's it. Speaking of Congress and the president trying to hash out some sort of agreement on health care, and I understand this week the president said that they're still working on that. It strikes me, and I know a lot of pundits have certainly said this as well, so I'm probably mimicking what I've heard from them as well, but that is, if that doesn't get done, along with some pretty serious tax cuts, which is why I played that bite from Mick Mulvaney there, the voters might just look to the Republican Party and say, wait a minute, you promised us you were going to fix these things.
Well, there's no question we have to deliver on promises that we put forward to the American people and the things that we ran on, and the president is working towards that every day. And you've seen him deliver. You've seen deregulation. You have seen him put forward a phenomenal Supreme Court justice. You've seen the Keystone Pipeline get up and running, and you're seeing that happen. And now we do have to work on the healthcare system because it is collapsing around us. We have Knoxville, Tennessee is about to be the first city in the country that will have no health care options for 40,000 residents. This isn't okay. It's unfortunate that the Democrats have decided to just leave the table. They want to obstruct. They want to say, no, we're not going to help with anything. And Republicans are going to continue to put people first, and people are really hurting. We need to pass something, and I think the president and our leadership in Washington recognizes that. They'd love to work across party lines, and the Democrats are just not playing ball.
Do you view that as your role as chairwoman of the RNC? By the way, we're talking to Ronna McDaniel, who is chairwoman. Do you view it as your role to kind of step into that debate and encourage them to reach some sort of an agreement? Does the RNC have a position on this?
Well, we can relay to them, and I do relay to them that it's going to have an impact. If we can't pass things that we campaigned on, we're going to see an impact in 2018. There's no question. We have to be able to run on the promises we made and kept during the 2016 cycle. And my job as RNC chair right now is start laying the groundwork and putting the ground game in place towards 2018, and that has to start early and organizing our volunteers. But we do need our leaders and our legislators to pass things and act on the things they promised, and so that we can run on those accomplishments.
Right, and I'm guessing they promised that if they get health care done, the president wants to get that done first, and then look at tax cuts. So on that issue that Mick Mulvaney was commenting on there, and that they want to go big, was that part of the platform this year? Can you talk about where the RNC stands on the kind of tax reform you'd like to see?
Yeah, I don't want to get over my skis on that because I'd like to see what they come out with. But always we're looking to put more money in the hands of individuals. We think that that we're better suited to spend our own money than the government. We want to make sure that we have tax cuts that are meaningful, that are helping the middle class, as the president has said, and they're working towards that. And I think a meaningful health care reform, because it's not just about winning in 2018, by the way. It's about people that are really struggling in this country. It's about people whose premiums are doubling every year. Deductibles are so high that they're afraid of their health insurance. It's about taking more money home in your paycheck. It's about making people's lives better, and that's our number one focus.
Yep.
And if we do that well, if we govern well, then the results will be that we'll be reelected.
When I listen to the Democrats, whenever they attack an issue against Republicans, it's a war on something. One they talk about a lot is the war on women. What's the significance in the fact that as a woman, you're head of the RNC and the impact you have on policies?
Well, the Democrats have determined that they do better when they divide, and when they push people away and create these false wars and these false narratives. And I will just tell you, as a woman, a Republican woman, I have been offended by the Democrats continually putting women in a corner as if we only care about one single issue, because women are engaged in every aspect of this country. We care about health care. We make most of the health care decisions. We care about education. We care about national security. And the Republican Party is always going to talk to women as the 53% of the voting electorate that they are, and we're going to engage them on every issue, which they deserve.
So I've been interested to get this perspective from somebody who was involved at the time at the state level in Michigan or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania. Back to the election, if I can have you comment on that for a minute. Did you see that coming? Were you seeing polls in Michigan that told you that Donald Trump had a real chance there? And were the Democrats just ignoring this? Did they not play the right ground game? What do you credit that victory there with?
Well, I will say as party chair, I did remain neutral in the primaries, which is what most party chairs do. But I made it a mission to go to every single event for every candidate coming into my state because I knew that Michigan was a winnable state. But that first event I went to for Donald Trump, there were 3,000 people there, and it was something like I've never seen before. It was a movement. He was reaching to voters in our state in a way that I hadn't seen. He talked about fair trade, and he talked about jobs and the economy and national security, and he connected with them and said, I'm going to be a champion for you, and your voices have been lost, and you haven't had anybody talking or representing you in Washington, and I'm going to go do that. And then that just continued to grow and grow through the election to the ultimate victory. But I will say the RNC was a critical component of that because we had offices in place 2 years earlier. We were knocking doors. We had a superior get-out-the-vote infrastructure in the state. And when you look at states like Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, when you're getting out the vote at those margins of 10,000, 25,000, or 65,000 votes, that's a difference maker. And Hillary Clinton did not invest in that infrastructure, and in my state particularly.
Yeah, well, I think people on the outside who are casual observers never appreciate the ground game. And not only were you actively involved in that in Michigan, but now you're doing it on a nationwide basis for you, and we wish you the best of luck. Ronna McDaniel, Chairwoman of the RNC, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to be here.
I'd love to have you on again sometime.
Sure thing.
All right. Thank you very much. That is Ronna McDaniel, who was just elected, only the second woman ever elected as chair of the RNC. And